cigar, and there's a sad old holiday. Arm in arm, we'll walk with it. When again I'll touch the green, green grass of home. Yes, they'll all come to see me in the shade of that old oak tree as they lay neath the green, green grass of home.
We light this candle to represent our grief. The pain of losing you is real. It reminds us of the depth of our love for you. It reminds us that our lives are now changed forever. And we light it for our love. We light this candle that your light will always shine. We cherish the special place in our hearts that will always be reserved just for you. We thank you for this gift that your living has brought to each of us. You are loved. You will long be remembered. Well, I welcome you today. My name is Philip Smith, and I'm both honored and saddened to be the funeral celebrant today. So we come together as family and friends to share these moments of comfort and remembrance for this life of Jerry Bryans. We all know Jerry's not his legal name, but I swore it would only be Jerry today from my lips. Now, there are many nicknames I know that would float around about Jerry over the years. I'm sure you have your own. Perhaps some that can be said and some that can't. But one of his favorites would always be Baby Binder, in reflection of that rich life that he would share in his father's shadow as a boy and well beyond. So no matter what you called him, we come together in this space today to honor Jerry, his life and his value in each of ours. And as we take this time to reflect on this life and celebrate the man who has made such an impact in each life that is represented here and across the miles, who had shared these moments and miles by his side, we also take this time to bring support to his family. Certainly today, but hopefully, and I know from this grouping, well into the days that will follow. Think of his loving wife and partner for their 50-plus years shared as Debbie. His loving children, his daughter, Terry Ann, and his son, Christopher, and his partner, Shannon. We think of his loving mother, Jean. His loving siblings, Jeannie and her husband, Wayne. Donnie and his wife, Colleen. Bonnie. Jim and his wife, Suzanne. His loving sister-in-law, Rowena. Along with each life that would make up the extended branches that are this family tree. And of course, those that would be called the friends, the neighbors, and the co-workers along this wonderful journey that was Jerry's life. We also pause today to remember those lives that were loved by and shared in this life that was his journey yet have gone on before. We think of his beautiful daughter, Tammy, his loving father, Bill, his sidekick, his brother, Raleigh, and his furry buddies, Dakota and Harley. Each now reunited with Jerry once more in that welcome of what lays beyond our sight and for eternity yet to come. You know, my friends, we're here today to hear the thoughts. We're here today to better understand the values that allowed Jerry to rise as an example of love and care in each of those lives who saw him live it out, who felt him shine it into their days over these 70 very rich years that made up this journey. You'll notice a theme today, that even in this loss that looms so largely in each of us gathered, Jerry would want today to be about the joy that shone through his life. The joy that was so evident in his smile, and in the way that he cared for each and every person that came to walk along this path that made up his days. And so our theme today is simple. We gather today to celebrate his life, to enjoy the memories and the moments that brought us light and laughter as they were shared by Jerry with us. The author Shannon L. Adler penned these words. She says, "Carve your name on hearts, not tombstones. A legacy is etched into the minds of others in the stories that they share about you." And as we move forward in our time together today, I'm going to invite a couple of those voices who have this legacy of Jerry etched deep within their hearts and minds to come and share their thoughts of him with us today. I'll invite first his longtime friend Dale, and then following Dale, his brother Jimmy, who's promised me we'll be done before lunch is served. Dale, would you come, my friend?
Just for reading. I wish I could have memorized this, but it would be too hard to. Debbie, my deepest sympathy to you and your family. Such a loss. And family and friends, so many of them. As I mentioned, I'm Dale McClanahan, longtime friend of the Bryans family. Jerry, I'll get it over with. Jerry's my best friend, closest friend. So we met at Smiths Falls District Collegiate in 1968. Time flies. This event was the beginning of a long and enjoyable friendship. Along with my twin brother, Darrell, we had the greatest time with Jerry. And Jerry had a connection to twins. Since him and Debbie, our godparents, were our twin boys, Jerry and Terry. And they used to call Jerry Papa Jerry. And I think you saw a few pictures of them up there together. I was so fortunate to spend the summer of '69 at the Bryans farm just outside of Smiths Falls, just past Buttermilk Hill. This was a great time, and it didn't take long to see how dedicated Jerry was in working with his parents on the farm. One memory is Jerry sharpening 8-foot cedar posts on this large tractor run circular saw. It's just amazing to see him. That was the first thing I saw him do when I went out to the farm. His strong and steady hand produced the perfectly sharpened posts. And this was just one of the many things Jerry did on the dairy farm. The Bryans family made a life-changing decision to move to Oshawa. Parents Bill and Jean, Jerry, Rolly, Jeannie, Donnie, Bonnie, and Jim were heading on the move out to Oshawa. This provided new doors to open and opportunities for advanced education and employment. New friends were made, and Jerry kept connected to high school classmates, university classmates, and co-workers at General Motors. His personality, kindness, his wittiness and love for life are only a few attributes that drew people to him. Thanks. Just come. Yeah, you can relax. Jerry attended and graduated from Trent University, and coincidentally, two of my future sister-in-laws were working in Peterborough at this time. So occasionally they would get together, and one particular time Jerry invited them over for supper and put his cooking skills to work. So they all enjoyed a big feed of craft dinner. Another, just when I was thinking about that, I think Jerry had an old Volkswagen, and they remember sitting there in the back seat watching Jerry drive this Volkswagen down the street like it's. So he made sure he always made things work. One course he remembered fondly was his trip to England to study architecture. This adventure allowed him to use his pleasant charm to make his way into older private homes to study the design and record the history of the homes. So I think, if I remember right, the professor went with them, but then once they got there, they had to go on their own. So it's bus, bicycle, train, and he was over there for at least a week or around that. So it was quite an adventure for someone that young, and he did a great job with that course. And he truly enjoyed meeting these people and sharing a cup of tea and a snack. And one time he was so happy when he was finally offered some food other than mutton sausage. When he talked about this story, he just the way he said that, mutton, like it sticks in your mind when he said it. Our families remain connected to this day. We shared many happy occasions, seeing the birth of all our children and all the things in life that happen between friends. Jerry was a true family man and worked hard to make a life for him and his family. He had a very successful career at General Motors, traveling various places in North America. Upon retirement, Jerry obtained his real estate license and ventured into a new career. On top of this, Jerry and Debbie also entered into farming with the purchase of Twin Bear Farms in Bob Cajun. They worked together as a perfect team. I can imagine all the discussions that took place as they moved along through the days during these busy times. Jerry was a professional at everything he put his hand to. The cow-calf operation was very successful, and the amazing improvements to the farm is incredible. His involvement in these ventures made great relationships with the local contractors, farmers, neighbors, and all the people he dealt with in real estate, concentrating on farm sales. Jerry's devotion to his parents and siblings remained solid. His connection with his parents remained true and strong. Bill and Jean were the cornerstone of the family. Jerry spent much time in keeping touch and helping out as much as possible during his busy life. His dad and Jerry spent many hours talking about cattle, ponies, and all the things that are involved with running a farm. Jerry passed on some favorite sayings that his dad had used very often, and Bill had lots of them. So one favorite being when Jerry and I were working at something, he would jokingly say, I wish I could say it in his voice, but don't stand there with your bare teeth hanging out. Jerry was always there for Terry Ann and Christopher and vice versa. A true and strong bond between father and children, supporting their career choices all the way and the important decisions they made. Jerry was dealt a devastating blow in this last couple of years, but I've been blessed to know a true friend that never gave up, put up a strong fight. We called to make plans to visit, and the doors were always open, even with his enduring illness. I can still hear his voice when he answered the phone in a strong voice. How are you? Every time. Caring so much about other people. The strong hugs on meeting and saying goodbye are embedded in my heart. I just want to share one more story in the college days. There was quite a group of us went out for Halloween to the bars. So, of course, we're all trying to get the best outfit. And it was quite a surprise when Geraldine came out. He was a beautiful looking woman. And he wore high heels. And when I was thinking about this little story, he walked in those high heels just like those boots. Yeah, he loved his boots. But no, that was a good memory that night with the Halloween. So, well, thank you for listening, and God bless you, Jerry. Take care. And I have a poem. It's The Final Flight, and the author's unknown. Don't grieve for me, for now I'm free. I'm following the path God laid for me. I took his hand when I heard this call. I turned my back and left it all. I could not stay another day, to laugh, to love, to work, to play. Tasks left undone must stay away. I found the peace at the end of the day. If my parting has left a void, then fill it with remembered joy. Friendship shared, a laugh, a kiss. Ah, yes, these things too I will miss. Be not burdened with times of sorrow. I wish you the sunshine of tomorrow. My life's been full, I savored much. Good friends, good times, a loved one's touch. Perhaps my time seemed all too brief. Don't lengthen it now with undue grief. Lift up your heart and share with me. God wanted me now. He set me free. Those pictures were lovely today. It's just bringing back so many memories. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dale. That was very much from the heart. Thanks for being Jerry's friend for 60 years. I mean, friendships like that you don't see them often. I'd like to start off by dedicating this whole thing to Debbie, because very rarely do you ever say Jerry without Debbie being followed, or Debbie without Jerry being followed behind. You know, when we went up there, it wasn't we were going to Jerry's, when we were going to Debbie's, we were going to Jerry and Debbie's. So every bit of this involves you, except for the first little bit about the farm. You weren't there yet, but I want you to know that every bit of it, the love seeps to you as well. I guess I better put on my glasses, because I'm not better than Dale without them, or better with them. Okay, my story starts out on the farm. Jerry was the oldest and I was the youngest. Rolly, Jeannie, Donnie, and Bonnie, all in between. I was the baby, as my mom would call me. Things were tight, to say the least. My dad was away a lot, logging on various jobs. Jerry was always the adult at the time. I believe Jerry took away two things from this time. The first being that if you put your head down, you work hard, you will succeed. And he believed that. The second thing he took away was a good friendship with a good friend named Dale McClanahan, who he had for his whole life. And Daryl, I want to include you in that. Because without our time in Smith Falls, he would have never made that link. He would have never had that long friendship, and we were very grateful. So we moved to Oshawa in 1970, me going on 8, Jerry going on 17. Believe it or not, my first experience with running, that was my first experience with running water or a flushing toilet. Jerry got to high school and set his sights on university, but while on this journey, he met Debbie. They were inseparable and stayed that way for more than 50 years. It was a match made in heaven. Now, Jerry and I weren't particularly close as I was younger, and I was only 8 and he was 17, and he had a new girlfriend by the time I think he was 19. And I was just an 8, 9-year-old kid. We didn't have an awful lot in common. It wasn't until really the end of high school when my mom and dad sold their house, and Jerry and Deb were living on Preston, and they welcomed me with open arms, as they always did. I mean, I can't tell you how much I appreciated it then and how much I appreciate it now. Now, when I think back to that place, I lived there for almost, from on and off, for 2 years, I would say. There was no questions, no rent, just love, and the house always felt completely like home. That was their house on Preston, which saw lots of visitors / tenants. At one point, myself, my buddy Ernie, who's been a lifelong friend of mine, who Christopher thought lived there, but he actually was just crashing on the couch every time we went out partying one night, and Ernie would be on the couch. Christopher was only, 5 or 6 at the time. Terry Ann only a few years older. And Ernie, well, they thought Ernie lived there too. After that, I think Trish was there. Denise lived there for a while. Denise had a friend named Jane who unfortunately wasn't getting along with her parents, and I don't want to say she was homeless, but she didn't have a place to go. They took her in. I think when Bonnie and Wayne separated, I think Bonnie lived there for a little while. It was Airbnb before Airbnb. I'm trying to work my way through the houses because that makes the most logical sense to me. So after all those visitors on Preston, I guess they didn't feel they had enough room, so they moved to a larger place in Curtis on Mulholland. I know that I remember the year specifically because I graduated chiropractic college in '93, moved in with them at that time, lived with them for about a year again. Must have been getting tired of me by this point. But it was always open arms. It was always family first. It was around that time that Jerry convinced me, always in the real estate state of mind, although he wasn't in real estate, he said, "Why the hell are you paying that money to a plaza when you could be paying that money to yourself? Buy a house and turn it into your clinic." I was broke. I was lucky to have them pay the banks even give me a mortgage, but I managed to get a mortgage. And Jerry and Deb were living in Eden Mills at that time, and I'm sure Deb remembers because I think she must have thought he had a wife in another town because Jerry came every weekend, I think it was every weekend, for 8 or 10 weekends to help me renovate that house. He'd be there Friday afternoon. He'd be the guy getting me up Saturday morning saying, "What the hell are you doing? Your teeth are hanging out, let's go." And he drove me. I didn't, I was the guy who had everything to lose, but he was the guy that knew he had the work ethic that I just did not have. But I learned a lot from him in that respect. I remember after spending week after week after week renovating that house, and us sleeping in bedrooms that weren't being renovated at the time, just, it wasn't luxury living. He never asked for a penny. It was always just food and thank you. That's all he ever wanted. He was just that way. And Deb, like I say, it was you too, right? I'm sorry if I say Jerry over and over again, but you're every bit of it. At the end of it, it took quite a while, and the clinic eventually took shape. And I was getting satisfied that things were on the way, but had remembered that at the time during the renovation, as we were tearing down one wall, we found an old horseshoe inside the wall. And Jerry thought that was kind of cool, and I didn't think much of it at the time. But when the renovations were all done, they presented me with this. I was the one who owed him things. He wasn't the one who owed me things, but this is the word of Debbie too. This is who they were. And it said, "Dr. Jim Bryans, DC. May this horseshoe bring you good luck and prosperity, found during the renovations of '99. So, let me just make sure I'm on the right track here. After their place in Mulholland, they moved up to Eden Mills. weren't there long when another visitor came along. Dale, one of his twins, was going to college in town, and open doors it was. So Terry ended up staying with them for a while he went to college. After spending a few years in Eden Mills, they moved to Brawley Road. I don't know how many tenants or visitors or anything like that you had there, but I'll tell you, there was an awful lot of Easter dinners, Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas dinners, 50th anniversaries. I got married during that whole period when you were at Brawley. It was always an open home, and I'm repeating myself, but I'm getting there. All right. I remember, as I talk about Brawley Road, I remember as I said, the Easter dinners, the Thanksgiving dinners, the Christmas dinners, and it wasn't always our side of the family. It was mixed. It was Deb's side of the family. We had huge meals there at times, but it was always about family. They always were there for us, for me, absolutely. Now, after Brawley, I think Jerry went through a few lost years there where he had way more energy than he actually had time to do, or things to do with it. You know, at Mulholland, at Brawley, he was building bat cages and sheds and running electricity. Like, I mean, he just seemed like he just had he was a guy with too much energy and not enough energy, or not enough things to spend it on. So, of course, it only makes sense that you'd buy a farm, right? I mean, because there's lots to do on a farm. And that was their dream, to have that farm. And I can't think of anything other than Debbie and the kids that Jerry loved more than that farm, right? That was his pride and joy. I find it funny because the stories as I remember them when I was young, he would bitch and complain about how much hay was down his back when the first time we lived on the farm, and I'll know I will never do that again, but he spent most of his life looking to get back onto a farm. It was ironic. I just want to go to the next page there. I want to go to the fact that although there's lots of good stories and beautiful things about Jerry and Debbie and how open they were and just how beautiful people they were, life was not always easy for them, right? Debbie's parents had lengthy illnesses. Jerry and Debbie were always there for them. Debbie's sister Gail, in her own her own battle with cancer, I think got a lot closer to Sarah and Mike and Donnie because of that, right? I mean, sometimes life's strange in that the hardest moments drive the closest people closest together. And I know I was there when Debbie made the phone call to Sarah, and I heard the devastation in her voice. He was a very, very loved man. I remember because I was there at the time, and Denise had sent a text, and she talked about all the different things in her life, the importance that they had to her, and just how much they had affected her life. Now, I wanted to make mention of Sarah and Mike had a son, Jacob. Is Jacob? He's here? Okay, I don't know Jacob. But Debbie refers to him as a grandson. She would tell me stories of him just up visiting a buddy in the area, just stopping in for 10 or 15 minutes or maybe longer, right? The sort of thing that not a lot of kids do, but obviously there was a lot of love there. Now I just go back to a few points because a lot of it has been about me and my family, and I wanted to make a few points about Ironically, I was the ring bearer at Jerry's wedding. Jerry and Debbie, see, I did it again, Deb. Jerry and Debbie's wedding. 27 years later, he was the best man at my wedding. And Trish, she was the flower girl at Jerry and Deb's wedding, and Jerry gave her away at her wedding. That's how close we were. I wanted to throw in something here that was a little less family-oriented, but a little more Jerry-oriented. When they lived on Preston, which was the place that took in all the tenants, Jerry was not going to have the fact that Terry Ann and Christopher would have to walk across Thornton Road. It was very busy, and that just wasn't going to happen. So he took on the municipality, and with enough fight and stubbornness and whatnot, he got a light put in right there at Saywell and Thornton, so the kids could cross the road and be safe, right? And fighting municipalities was, well, I think it was a game for Jerry, but because when they moved to Eden Mills, there was an old bridge, and this old bridge they had condemned because of age. And the discussion or the argument within the community was, do we restore this bridge or do we build a new bridge? Correct me if I'm wrong, but Jerry was on the side that this is an expanding community and we need more access and the bridge should be replaced, right, with a new bridge and not a historic bridge. But he didn't have any, he found it like a game to fight with municipalities, but he just was always go, go, go. He never there was always too much time on his hands, it seemed. Now, one little piece that it was very important to me was in my final year of chiropractic college, things were getting pretty tight. I was basically running out of money. Jerry and Rolly took out a line of credit for me, co-signed for a line of credit for me to get through that year. And I remember a couple of months before Jerry passed, I said that to him, and I told him how much that had meant to me. And he goes, I don't even remember that. He says, you fucking think too much. That was Jerry. When family wouldn't come here, he'd go to family. Bonnie's son, Jeff, and his wife Lisa are in Hong Kong. They decided as a group they were going over to visit Jeff in Hong Kong. Because if family can't come to my house, we'll go to their house, right? That's just the way they were. I remember a little anecdote here from when we were on Brawley Road. Take my foot out of that. Debbie and Jerry gave Sue and I a book, and Liam will remember this. It was 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, and it was an original illustrated Santa Claus, and we read that to Liam every year, and well, until he was 20, he just gave up on Santa Claus last year. There was too many gifts in it for him, right? Twin bear. I think a twin bear, and I think, talk about a perfect name for two tough, strong people, right? I just think there should be Teddy in the middle of it, because twin teddy bear farms would have been more appropriate. You know, you were strong, but there was always compassion there. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a little bit about Harley. Harley, we grew up on the farm, and animals were animals. They weren't really family members. But that wasn't the way with Harley and Dakota. But Harley was around first, but then Dakota was a rescue dog, and everybody knew that Jerry and Debbie had a border collie, so they said, would you like another one? And so they took on those two dogs. But Jerry had an affiliation, an affection for Harley that was just unbelievable. And when Harley unfortunately passed, it was like Jerry was out of sorts. He didn't know. When he walked to the barn, there was nobody behind him. When he go out on the tractor, there was nobody there. Harley had followed him everywhere he went. And one of the greatest honors of my life is that Jerry asked me to be there in his passing moments. And one of the things we did was we put Harley's ball with him to be cremated, because we hoped that guess I'd like to. I'd just like to say a couple more things. Terry Ann, Christopher, you've got huge, huge shoes to fill. I have no doubt with your mom's support and the support of everybody else that you'll fill those shoes. But I don't know how, right? Because I can't fill it. I just want to say, and Deb, I know you didn't do one bit of it for me or for my family or for your family. Every bit of it was for Jerry. I know that, but I still want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you did for him, right? It was amazing to watch. Jerry got his diagnosis on April 5th. That's correct, right? Yeah. And he got his diagnosis on April 5th. And every waking moment after that, it was about how am I going to get things in order for Debbie. It just seemed like everything was that way. And Debbie, on the other hand, was going to surgeries, making sure he took his medication, sleeping on the couch, not getting any sleep, making sure that his every need was met. It was sad but beautiful at the same time. Neither one of them thought about themselves. They only thought about the other. I don't even know what to say about that. It was so beautiful. So, I'm just going to get myself down to the last couple of days before Jerry had passed. I was honored that Jerry asked me to be there at the time of his passing. And we went up and we hugged and we kissed and we did all kinds of things. And near the end of the night, that night, Christopher said to his dad, "Okay, let's go." And I didn't know where they were going, but apparently they were jumping on the Kubota. They were going to take a run around the farm. They wanted to take a run around the farm. So they got in there, and I took a couple of pictures as they were going, and they take off, and he comes back, and then he takes off again, and they're out and about, and Christopher tells his stories. He's out there, and of course Jerry, ever the worker, he's just out looking at his property, admiring what he's built and what you have achieved, not just him. And he goes, "I don't think that water bowl over there is working. Go over there." So Christopher drives him over to it. There's water, and he wants to know whether it's refilled. He jumps out of the car and scooping the water out like this, and Christopher says, "All I can see was binder." Because we all have short, fat hands, right? But he was working to the very, very end. In fact, the morning that Jerry passed, he was still working. He had a friend and a colleague that he worked with that come over. He wanted to make sure, because he was in real estate, that he started this job and he'd started that job, and he wanted to make sure that Deb was going to get every dime of every job that he had started, right? That last 6 months of his life, I think, was absolutely devoted to Debbie. I just don't see it any other way, and I only see it that you were devoted to him. It was absolutely beautiful. Let me see here. I think that I'm just going to wrap up there. I love you guys. You know that. Your father meant the world to me and everybody in my family, but I look at it from my perspective. And I'll never be able to be as grateful as I can be. Right? I love you guys. And Deb, all the help you need, you just have to call. You just have to call. I love you. And Christopher, Gary, I love you too.
Thank you both so much for those thoughts today. It's one of the hardest things we do to stand for those we love and share our voices, but the value is certainly there. Now, the story is told of a young TV reporter that became lost on the back roads one day. As he was driving down that roadway, he spotted a farm, and he stopped by that farm, and he was talking to the farmer who came out to the roadway to notice the young man. As he was talking to the farmer, he would look behind the farmer and he'd notice this pig. The odd thing about the pig is the pig had a wooden leg. Now that reporter was a bit of a keener and thought, wow, this could be a great human interest story for the 6 o'clock news. Maybe I'll get some airtime. So he asked the farmer, how did the pig lose its leg? Well, said the farmer, that's a very special pig, my friend. He said, one night not too long ago we had a fire that started in the barn, and that pig squealed so loud that he woke everybody up on the farm. By the time we got there, he had herded all the other animals out of the barn. He saved them all. He saved my farm. Ah, said the reporter, so that's how the pig lost his leg then? Nope. No, he made it through that just fine. It was a little while later that I was out in the back 40 in the woods, and all of a sudden this bear showed up and began to rear up and started to attack me. Well, that pig, he came running out of nowhere. He rammed that bear so hard from behind that it startled him so bad that he chased it off. He certainly saved me that day for sure. Wow. So he got injured in the bear attack then? Nope. Came away from that without a scratch. Though a few days later, my tractor had turned over in the ditch and it knocked me unconscious. Well, that little oinker dove into the ditch and he pulled me out with his teeth before I got cut up in all that machinery. That pig saved my life. Well, that's amazing, said the reporter. So the pig hurt his leg in the machinery then? No, we both walked away from that one, said the farmer. The reporter, a little frustrated at this point, asked, so how did he get that wooden leg then? Well, my friend, that pig is so special he should never be eaten all at once. If you hadn't heard that joke before, then it's obvious to me that you haven't spent nearly enough time with Jerry Bryans. Because that was one of his personal favorites. As I sat down to write last night, I was searching for the perfect backdrop to keep me thinking like Jerry as I wrote. And so I flipped to All Willie all the time, and just so we're clear, that's a Willie Nelson music station, not a porn site. And as I sat down to think about what I knew about Jerry that he wanted you to hear about him today as well, my mind was drawn back to our conversation on the 3rd day of June just a few months ago now. As a few days earlier, I had gotten a call from Jerry, and he told me that he was planning for the end of the journey and wanted me to tell his tale. I told him I was honored to be asked. We planned a day for me to come up to the Twin Bears, truly one of his favorite spots on this planet, to have a chat. And so we began, always the courteous host and hostess. They offered me a drink. I sat down and Jerry proceeded to tell me that he was terminal and that in what I have come to know is a very Jerry manner, he wanted all the details dealt with before his departure. So I asked him to tell me about his life. And my friends, this is what he told me. He proceeded to tell me how he was proud to be the son of Bill and Jean Bryans, who would welcome him to their hearts and homes in Smiths Falls, Ontario, on that 9th day of October in 1953, just 8 days shy of where we stand today, which would have been his 71st birthday. He tried to hold on for 71. He told me about the life that he was lucky enough to live. Whether it was just following his dad around the farm, hence that nickname Baby Binder, a reflection of Bill's own nickname of Binder. There was always lots to do and be done on the homestead. From the cattle that needed tending daily to the pigs and the chickens that were part of their days. And he would grow up in the shadow of a hard-working and loving man who would dedicate his effort to ensuring that there was always food on the table and a roof overhead for this family of his. And it's lucky that Bill was too, because as the years would pass, he and Jean, well, you know how cold Smiths Falls area can be in the winter. They would continue to add to the names on that family tree year over year. They would welcome another 5 sets of feet to the edges of the Bryans family table over that journey. And just because the family would grow didn't mean the work would ever lessen, it seemed. Jerry noted that the spring he would deal with the cedar posts, and in the summer the endless acres of hay. In the winter the pulpwood would have its turn, wearing them down day by day. And all that work would see them find some rewards as well. Simple things for you and I, perhaps. But for Bill, the beautiful new doors that he would put on his barn, well, that would be a point of pride. Something he was proud to have put in the effort to have added to their little farm. I'm sure that Jerry and Raleigh, hanging out inside the barn that day, preparing to start the chores for the afternoon as a pair of young teens, well, they never would have thought about how much those doors had meant to Dad. That was until the moment when Jerry was hand cranking the tractor over in front of it and suddenly had to jump out of the way because he realized it was still in gear and was about to run him over. It would take those new doors to kindling in a moment and a half. Needless to say, Bill would be none too pleased about his lovely new doors being all over the farmstead. But Raleigh was laughing so hard he likely had to change his overalls. And Jerry would live to tell the tale. And as the years would come and go, he would continue in that work ethic and dedication to the land and the family that shared it with him. He'd be 17 when the family farm was sold. As in another act of caring for his family and their needs, Bill would take a job at Nattico in Oshawa. The family would call Oshawa their new home, right at the side of the 401 and Howard Street. Needless to say, it would take some time to adjust to this new daily grind and the lack of serenity that was now their backyard. For Jerry, that would include his last years of high school as well. And I asked Jerry what kind of student he was. And he noted that he had gotten out of grade 12 by the skin of his teeth. But driving a dump truck for the summer after grade 12, well, for Jerry, that would be enough to make him buckle down and take 80s and 90s out of his grade 13 year, which would earn him that spot at Trent, where he would study urban geography and some general studies that would allow him to cobble together a Bachelor of Science degree. He would also note for me that many of his siblings would also achieve university degrees. And I could tell that there was pride in that thought as he said it, and as he thought about his siblings that he loved so greatly. And while that first year in Oshawa may not have been his best academically, it would certainly be one of the most important of the next 50-plus years of his journey shared. As it would be in those high school hallways in Oshawa that he would then encounter the lovely Debbie for the first time, begin to slowly sweep her off her feet. They would become high school sweethearts at a time when that lasted more than a month or so. And they would share that young love and watch it blossom into the joy they would find in each other day by day and month by month for the years that would follow. And I asked Jerry to tell me about how he proposed. And this is where Debbie jumped in for a moment. She proceeded to tell me that the first time he asked her, he was drunk as a skunk. That's a direct quote. And she didn't believe that he was serious. So the last time, there were a couple. So the last time he would make the journey from university for the summer break, and in that first week home, he would be hanging out with the beautiful Deb. He would proceed to produce from his pocket a pretty little ring box. And as he stood in front of her, he would extend his hand and gently place the little box in hers. And then Jerry would proceed to turn around and walk away. Oh, don't fret, my friends. Deb would make sure he returned to ask her the right way. And for Jerry, that would be the best piece of instruction he would receive for the next 50 years of his life. They would join their lives at St. Stephen's in Oshawa in '74, and a friend of theirs was the cleric at the time. Oh, he's here. How you doing? Nice to see you, sir. During Jerry's second year of university, and when the years of university would find their end in '76, the newlyweds looking for some adventure would hop in their car and boot it out west to Calgary together. It seems that Jerry had an offer from a stud farm. I know I was wondering how they heard about this stud in Ontario, all the way in Calgary as well, but apparently Jerry had read the letter wrong, and it was to work with studs. And yet when the call would come from GM about 3 weeks into this new gig in Calgary, well, that was a job offer for the summer that Jerry wanted, and they would head back. They were packed, and in no time flat, Jerry would spend the next few months working with the motors for his first go-round. He would apply for a salaried role while he was there during that summer, hoping that maybe something would open up. Yet the cutbacks would come, and Jerry would never let moss grow under his feet or an obstacle become a challenge, and so he was off to find the next role. He would find work as the manager of Skylark Service Centre in Lombardy, Ontario. If you've never heard of it, that's okay. It was just down the road from his old stomping grounds in Smiths Falls. And so for the year that followed, Lombardy would be home. And on a weekend away to visit friends in Oshawa, he'd be walking through the OC. It's the Oshawa Centre for the Uninitiated. He'd bump into a buddy from Plant Days who would tell him the GM was hiring again. And as soon as Jerry could get someone to answer the phone at GM, he made his pitch. The response on the other end was simply, "When can you start?" And considering that about 2 years later, he and Debbie would welcome their second amazing life, Christopher, the timing would definitely be ideal. And for the 32 years that would follow, Jerry would work in all those roles that GM asked him to carry out for them. Whether it was in material control or transportation, and then purchasing from indirect to the 7th level. If you're part of GM, you understand what I'm talking about. I have no clue. Then on to the product side of things, and in time, Jerry would be traveling across North America week in and week out, leaving the love of his Debbie, his Terry Ann, and his Christopher stretched over the miles each week that he was gone. He was honest enough to tell me how hard that was. And it would really click for him one night in particular when he was thousands of miles away from home, in a lonely hotel room, and the phone would ring. And on the other end of that line would be a frantic Debbie, explaining that Terry Ann had a science project that was due the next day, and they needed Jerry to jerry-rig it for them. 90 minutes later, the project was done with Jerry's help remotely. He only got a B on the project, but he saved the day just the same. And the other thing that happened was a shift. It saw him spend the next 20 years back in the proximity of those he loved so much more than those lonely hotel rooms. He would become their general supervisor for the parts teams for Saturn, Saab, and Isuzu. Now, I don't know that, those brands don't exist, and I don't think that had anything to do with Jerry. But in the next 15 years, they would see him as the warehouse admin for parts for about 10 of them. And then 5 as a PM for the automation and parts for the dealers network. But Jerry had a plan. The plan was simply this: out the door by 55, one way or the other. Luckily for Jerry, he would be one of those to put up his hand and gladly take the handshake that GM would offer. And while he would turn 55 on October 9th, he would turn in an ID on the 1st of November. And in true Jerry fashion, he was already underway with his real estate license. So by February 12th, he was already taking listings and shifting into the next 15 years that would be his second career, wheeling and dealing across Durham region. And while the work was something that Jerry would love, It would always be the ones that he was working for at home that would motivate him to those successes with each turn of the sun and moon. And when I asked him to tell me about them, well, Deb went to get me another drink. And Jerry told me how truly proud of this family he was. How much he had loved the times that created the core that held him as family times. From those first miles shared in the motorhome, cruising to Disney together. When a tire would blow on that big rig in the wilds of Tennessee in the middle of Easter weekend. Poor little Christopher was terrified, I'm told. Not simply because of the banjo music that suddenly started coming out of the woods. You have to be a certain age to get that one, I'm sorry. But that the Easter Bunny wouldn't be able to find him so far away from home. So little Christopher, as he dreamt of the wonders of Disney yet to come. Jerry and I have to imagine Deb would proceed to hide Easter eggs throughout the RV for the joy of the next morning with their littles. And he would love the times that he could spend on the ball field with them both over their years as well. For Christopher, it was those T-ball years. Jerry always being happy to be a help at the field. So as soon as Jerry put up his hand and said, "I'd like to help," they made him the coach. It was a team of 3- and 4-year-olds, and as Jerry noted for me, there wasn't much coaching, more just watching them wander the field and pick daisies. But when Terry Ann would take to the field, it was far more serious. She'd become a bit of a softball fanatic, I'm told. Jerry again casually mentioning he would be happy to help out, and so they made him the umpire. Which made all those tournament weekends easier to stomach for certain, as they would both have a purpose to being at that field. Now, I do need to note here that Jerry was indeed the exact type of umpire you might picture Jerry to be. More so when parents would become the problem than kids, because Jerry wasn't taking shit from anybody. And oftentimes he could be heard lovingly telling a parent that they were free to leave or he would. Picture your own version of Jerry's vernacular there, if you will, in that conversation. As these years would come and go, more time shared as a family on the road. I think the last time they would travel together in those teen years, Terry Ann was 16. They had borrowed Bill and Jean's motorhome to explore the beauty of Quebec City together. Now, for those of you who know Jerry well, you will also know that he's quite a genealogy buff. Loves everything to do with the family tree, and when the time came for him to explore something that was so uniquely in his vein in Quebec City, well, he couldn't say no. After all, that trip would take him so close to Gros Isle, a very well-known cemetery, that he couldn't pass it up. And I have the greatest idea in my mind of how captivating that would have been to a 12 and 16-year-old in tow who had no sweet clue or inclination of having a clue about the dead that laid there. To make it even better, Debbie would venture to the loo on that trip and proceed to flush her wedding ring down the toilet into the depths of the St. Lawrence River. But the best part of the trip for me would be blowing the tranny out on Bob's motorhome. Having to rent space in the garage's parking lot to finish the excursion as the people hauler was mended. Makes sense to me now how Terry Ann would decline any further offers of family adventures shared for the next few years. But he and Christopher would share more time in the great outdoors. As Christopher would become his little hunting and fishing buddy over those years. Taking out the 14-footers and enjoying Perch Fest. Spending time heading north to Sudbury to share in the excursions with family and friends alike. Whether they were pulling in the fish by the ton or finding a new mount for the walls of the hunting cabin in northern Quebec. Many of those trips would see Jerry share those trips with 3 generations of Bryans men. As Bill would often be along for the joy of it all as well. And when the winter months would come, you could often find the family shredding the hills at Kirby or Mount St. Laurent. Each outing stuff to build memories from. And as they would grow, so too his pride in their accomplishments. And when I asked them to tell me one of the things that meant so much to them, it was that thought that he provided a level of stability that would allow them to grow in the confident and self-confident adults that you each know as them today. One of the ways that he and Debbie would provide that stability would be the promise that they would cover the undergrad degree, and anything more, well, that would just be a loan. For Terry Ann, she would take him up on both, first from Carleton, and then she would graduate with her master's from the University of Dublin, before making her way into the world of human rights, working alongside the UN to provide care for lives without much hope in spots like South Sudan, where she currently works today. And Christopher, well, he would gladly take that degree and marry it with his natural sales abilities. To quote Jerry, that kid could sell ice cubes to the Inuit. And he would find a career in the automotive sector, although it would be with Toyota and not GM. Each would be spoken of with such honest and heartfelt pride as he told me of your exploits. And when I asked them to tell me what they loved about him as a dad, they told me about the fact that he always had his own way of doing things. He was never shy about letting you know the right way, which usually ended up being the Jerry way, whether you liked it or not. Yet he would never push in any direction, but was always there to support them as they plotted the course ahead. Oh, sure, he wanted to see his investment pay off. But again, in Jerry's words, they have paid it back in spades. And when I asked them to tell me of their favorite memories of him in their lives, Christopher would tell me how much he loved seeing him laugh at a joke from 3 weeks earlier. With no prompting at all, just that true joy in a moment of Jerry thinking about it again and bursting into laughter. Perhaps you've been around long enough to see that come to life in your own moments with Jerry as well. Like the smile that would come to his face each time he would think about his plan for dealing with folks that happened to come by and pick the garbage out of that big semi-annual day in Oshawa where everybody jumped the curb and dumped all the large stuff out. Well, Jerry had devised a plan that he would defend his garbage with what could only be defined as a shit spreader. Jerry's plan was simply to set it in place, fill the hopper with liquid manure, and as each sprinkler head would protrude from the garbage pile just enough to spray clearly at the individual there, Jerry could sit in his front window and hit the trigger and take care of anybody poking about his prized trash. He could fire it off and watch the mayhem ensue. Sometimes you'd look over and he would simply be laughing at that thought, even though he never put it into action. For Terry Ann, it was the drives. Whether it was willingness to haul her from home all the way to Oshawa for school, or for the team sports in those early mornings, with the music of the Clancy brothers filling their vehicle and Jerry singing along at the loudness of his voice, or the long drives to Ottawa and Smiths Falls together, and even more recently, the ones they would share in these years of treatment as well, where sometimes there was a chat, and sometimes it was just quiet. But the music of Willie's Roadhouse, well, it would always make an appearance. Until Deb got in the vehicle, and as soon as she got in, well, Willie could take a break from entertaining. As the time rolled on, I asked Jerry to tell me about some of those things that he loved in this life. He told me how much he loved wood carving. That was until the day that he drove the knife into his wrist and bled like a stuck pig. So he gave that up. Now, I have a funny feeling there might have been an influencer in that. And he loved the history, the family history that would be built on research, built the insights of the Bryans family clan in Canada, as well as mother's side of the puzzle. would be a labor of love that would take him from Ottawa to Ireland, now captured for generations to follow and learn from, and the mementos now to be held. And he loved those things that captivated him, whether it was the camera in his hand and snapping tens of thousands of pictures over the years, or the side gigs that would keep him busy in his downtime, his lawn business, or doing income taxes for truckers. He would love the music of the country. He and Debbie would even make a pilgrimage to the heart of it all, Nashville. It was a bus trip filled with friends and new friends to be made. It was a trip that even Debbie would enjoy. Apparently she had tipped the driver $50 not to play any Willie. He loved his dogs. The collies that would become his farmhands over the years, Dakota and most recently Harley. Each now finding the best sticks they could find to catch up on lost time with Jerry. And thankfully he's brought his ball. He would love the family of his birth. The love of his mother, Jean, the warmth that she would build into his life, and the family they would share within. Whether it was he and Raleigh making time in spite of distance over the years, or the deals that he would close with Don. The whole gang together up at the Twins, time and time again, to celebrate the love and example of Bill and Jean's life for their 25th, 40th, 50th, and 60th anniversaries together. To celebrate the love and example of their lives, or to welcome a Thanksgiving feast, or a Christmas meal, or an Easter supper with 25 to 30 smiling faces filling their spots. The brothers and the sisters all gathered together again, sharing love and building memories to be held. Or simply the joy of being a part of those events that are now mile markers in each life, the weddings, the graduations shared over lifetimes. And the welcome of Shannon to the family. In Jerry's own words, Shannon is a great addition to this family and to Christopher's side. And he would love the travel that he would get to share within his years. Some of those trips to see family in spots like Hong Kong, or the welcome of exotic locations shared with his Debbie, be they to Africa and the wonder of their safari there, Italy and the welcome of a river cruise that would see them enjoy so much of Europe as well. Spots like Amsterdam and Budapest, Germany and the Czech Republic, as well as Austria. And of course, Ireland, with his family history traced, and even with the helicopter circling overhead all night long, and the 3-hour checkpoints just to visit a cemetery, well, he was in for it all. And just for a splash of sunshine, those trips to Barbados to give Jerry that hit of the UV rays he loved so much, as Debbie would enjoy the shade under a nearby umbrella. She's not the sun baby in the family, I'm told. And he would love the sayings that would come out when the timing was perfect, even if he was the only one who understood them. You remember some of the greats. You're dumb as a bag full of hammers. The one we heard earlier, don't just stand there with your bare teeth hanging out. Or my personal favorite, get over there and think like a cow. No matter how much love he held for the rest, he would love his Debbie most of all. The one who would make him ask the right way, so it would always be the right decision. The wife and partner that would travel the miles, that would put up with the breakdowns along the way, that would join him in celebrating each of their successes found, who would walk the road of parenthood by his side, and who would support him in each day of the 32 years that he would choose sobriety day by day. She would even mow the lawn at the spot that they love so very much. Now that's a loving woman, my friends. And of course, their home, his little piece of Shangri-La, the Twin Bears. You know, my friends, as I was preparing these thoughts, I wondered how I would capture that love effectively. To give you the same understanding that Jerry gave me as he spoke to me that afternoon. So rather than try and translate it for you, I decided that I would let him tell us in his own words through this letter that he has written to Deb. Dear Debbie, yeah, I see you reaching for tissues. I love you more than words can say. You have stuck by me in the good times and the bad through all these years. Through my anxious times, my troubled times, and when it seems the only things I think about are financial woes and planning for our future, you are the calm in my life. When I criticize the little things you do, I know what makes you, you. I'm grateful for this life we share. You have given me 2 great children who wear your most positive attributes. You make our house a home. Your labors don't go unnoticed, although it may seem like it at times. Your dedication to work and home to ensure we exceed the successes of our parents is greatly appreciated. Your compassion to see that our children have more than we is a symptom of your never-ending love. The list should go on forever. Suffice to say, no one could make me happier. I love you with all my heart. Love, Jerry. The Joker and the love of a lifetime. Both sides of the same coin that is Jerry Bryans. In his book, Gratitude, the neurologist and author Oliver Sacks writes a series of short essays on his view of life as he comes to the understanding and knowledge that his own death is quickly approaching. And as he notes the number of lives that have surrounded his own, that have now passed on, he also makes a very clear observation. He says, when people die, they cannot be replaced. They leave holes that cannot be filled, for it is the fate, the genetic and neural fate of every human being to be a unique individual. To find their own path, to live their own life, and to die their own death. And when I look at this example of Jerry under the light of those words and in the reality of what we've heard and spoken of today, I see clearly the image of a life that is truly irreplaceable. You know, my friends, there's honesty in our sorrow today. The loss of those we love is something we must each walk in and deal with in our own ways in our own time. And yet we also believe that for everything there is an appointed time. A time when we are born and a time when we die. For Jerry, his time would come just days ago now. On that 21st day of September in this year of 2024. Surrounded by the love of this family that loved him so greatly. Sitting on the porch looking over the land that he loved so greatly. Taking one last look over the beauty of this spot that he had shared and cared for as his time would come. And Jerry would journey on to know peace. It's a time that would bring him relief from any of the pain that his body had carried and endured. The release from any of the physical limitations these last few months of his journey would see him bound by. A time that he would be reunited with those that he had loved in this lifetime and longed to see once more. Now welcome to their side, beyond our sight, and for eternity yet to come. For those of us who remain, Jerry and his value in your lives will still be felt over the course of your days for as long as your memories last. For those present witness to this wonderful life, my encouragement for you today is that we continue to be present for each other in each of these days ahead as well. That when your thoughts drift to him, perhaps you'll find time to reach out to Debbie, Terry Ann, Christopher, to the extent of this family, to be a comfort and a care alongside them in those times when they may need the warmth of your smile or your embrace, or just your listening ear to listen when it's needed most. In just a few moments, we'll begin to bring our formal time of remembrance in this chapel to its close. The staff here at Barnes Memorial will join us and usher us to a time of reception and the opportunity for you to continue on in those shared thoughts of Jerry and his value in your life with one another. Following our time of reception, the family will invite you to join them as we make our way to Groveside Cemetery to lay Jerry to his final place of rest. But in the couple moments that remain, I'd like to share with you two final things. A reading dedicated in love from Debbie and the family today, and then another of Jerry's musical choices for today. The poet writes these words: "Should you go first and I remain to walk this road alone, I'll live in memory's garden, dear, with happy days we've known. In spring I'll wait for roses red when faded the lilacs blue. In early fall when brown leaves fall, I'll catch a glimpse of you. Should you go first and I remain for battle to be fought, each thing you've touched along the way will be a hallowed spot. I'll hear your voice, I'll see your smile, though blindly I may grope. But the memory of your helping hand will buoy me on with hope. Should you go first and I remain, one thing I'll have you do: walk slowly down that long, long path that I might follow you. I want to know each step you take, for I may take the same. But someday, down that lonely road, you'll hear me call your name.